upscale West Hollywood votes to defund sheriff department even as crimes soars to 137%, while savings will be used to fund 30 unarmed security ambassadors and a Russian arts festival. Now, keep in mind, this is an article I'm reading, so forgive me if you don't agree with the article. Let me just finish the article here. Here we go. West Hollywood City Council has voted to defund their sheriff's department despite crime rocketing 137%. The proposal passed by a narrow 3-2 vote will see the current force of around 60 sheriff deputies reduced by 4. Funds saved by reducing the headcount will be used to pay for unarmed security ambassadors under a scheme called Block by Block. Despite slashing the policing budget, the council agreed to stump up funds for Russian Arts Festival, increasing their contribution from $14,000 to $50,000. And then Lauren Mester, I believe, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Democratic mayor of West Hollywood and a member of the council who voted against the plan, called it illogical, noting that the Los Angeles enclave is afflicted by rising tide of violence. So having said that, Seppi, if I'm not mistaken, you were the leader in causing this change. Yes, if I'm not mistaken.
So here's the thing. I made the motion, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about what we did. What we actually did Monday night was go through and approve our entire budget. What we did with regard to our community safety department, which has nothing to do with the Russian Arts Festival, that's a completely different budget line item. We actually increased our public safety department budget as a whole. We reallocated funding within the department and increased public safety funds. This whole wording about, they're defunding the police, this is actually not what the defund the police movement was supposed to be. Defunding the police movement was about slashing officers and putting that money into social services. What we did do is, on a different budget item, increase social services by $1 million, but it had nothing to do with this. We have a proven program called Block by Block Security Ambassadors, which, by the way, the mayor herself brought forward 2 items to increase their presence on our east side, which was having a lot of crime in commercial corridors earlier this year, and that proved really successful. And then throughout the commercial corridors in this same budget, we increased 6 kiosks for our businesses and 36 full-time Block by Block ambassadors. So it's really disappointing that she supports this program for businesses, but when it comes to residents who want foot patrols, she thinks it's not successful, and that's just a rhetoric she's using to get reelected, frankly.
Seppi, excuse me.
Yeah, the fact is,
Seppi, excuse me, Jedediah here. I just had a question for you. Because the original defund the police movement, the motivation was actually to reallocate money, but it was to remove money from police and move it into other aspects. Oftentimes people suggested social workers, other options that were not. So what I'm trying to get to the bottom of here, I don't know what a block by block ambassador is here, but ultimately you have a problem in this area of California with crime. I think we can all acknowledge that. So is there going to be money, A, that leaves the sheriff's department that is going to cause less police officers to be available, to be on the street? And if so, what is the alternative to that? Are you going to advocate for Second Amendment rights for citizens? What is the alternative? Because safety has to come from somewhere. And if you can't call the police, what do you do?
Sure. So here's the thing. Our residents have wanted us to have foot patrols in neighborhoods. And the deputies in the sheriff's department, their pay has increased substantially over the past 10 years, almost doubled.
Is the foot, not to interrupt, are the foot patrols armed? Are those people going to be armed as police officers would be?
No, they are not armed. There
okay, so what happens
there are block by block security ambassadors that have proved successful to deter crime.
Are they armed? Are the security ambassadors armed?
No.
No one is armed. Okay, so I have a question for you though, because the criminals are armed. Criminals are most of the time armed with something. So if a criminal has a gun, we know criminals don't obey laws. They get a gun, they get a hold of a gun, they set out to cause crime, to rob, assault, whatever it may be, and they're not confronted with someone who is armed. what is that person going to do? Get shot? What happens there? How are you envisioning that conversation? Because to me, it seems that someone who's trained, someone who has passed their background checks, someone who is a citizen who is armed, or someone who is a police officer would be the best person for that criminal to meet on the street, not someone who's going to try to talk them out of committing a crime. I'm genuinely curious of your thoughts on
Yeah,
that.
sure. Here's the thing. We have trained our block by block ambassadors, and crime doesn't just happen in an isolated place in the city of West Hollywood. It happens all over. And we have proven that these block by block ambassadors actually deter criminals. We literally have proof of that. And right now, they have not been under harm doing their job. They've been doing a fantastic job.
But the crime rate in look at the crime rate in the area, right? So if they're doing a great job, why does the crime rate look the way that it does?
The 137%, by the way, is also factually untrue. That was a point in time, and literally, the problem with percentages is you're looking at something. If there was one robbery and then it became two over 6 months, that's 100% increase. The fact is, we looked at all the numbers and all the stats of crimes, and the 2019 numbers were actually higher than 2021. Of course, 2020 was low because crime fell because people mostly were locked into their homes. So these percentages really create more fear, and they're actually not based on what the truth is. And so the block by block security ambassador works in our commercial corridors, and it's going to work in our residential. And we're doing this in a very pragmatic, slow way. We're going to be decreasing 2 deputies in 90 days. And we actually added 1 extra deputy. So the net total in 90 days will actually be 1. We've had issues in our nightlife district at night. So we're adding 1 entertainment policing deputy. And then 9 months from now, we're going to reevaluate the program.
Seppi, can I ask you a question? With respect.
What the crime, let me finish.
Yeah.
We're going to see what the crime stats are in 9 months. And in 9 months, if the program is successful, we may reduce 3 more deputies. And this is 60 deputies versus then 56 in total, potentially.
Seppi, a legitimate question, because I come from New York City, which struggles with crime as of late. It's one of the reasons I moved was because I have a 2.5-year-old and I couldn't justify living in a city where the police force didn't feel supported, and also Second Amendment rights aren't exactly upheld for individuals in New York City. How do you feel? What do you say to someone like me? I'm a young woman. I'm pretty small in size and stature. I like the idea of a police force that feels supported, and I like the idea of a strong Second Amendment, because I know that if I'm met on a street corner by someone who wants to do harm to me or my child, I want the good guy with the gun, be it a police officer or myself, to be able to counter that person. What do you say to someone who hears this and hears, about ambassadors and social workers and just doesn't feel confident and comfortable living in a city where that is the alternative and the antithesis that's presented to a criminal walking around with a gun who seeks to do harm? What do you say to me?
First of all, what I say to you is I understand your fear. I understand your fear. And honestly, as a woman, I myself have had fears walking streets. And what I will also say is, looking at the actual crime stats, they're not as high as the media is making them seem and spinning them.
But it's not just a media game, Seppi, because I've been in WeHo and I've been in New York City. It's real, it's tangible, it's on the ground. So, I mean, do you support the Second Amendment? Are you a Second Amendment advocate? If someone wanted to go and follow the proper protocol and they said, this is my city, they're decreasing the police force, this is my opportunity to step in and defend myself and my family, would you support that?
Defend yourself and your family in what way?
Yeah, say I wanted to get a gun. Say I wanted to follow protocol and I said there's less police on the streets. I don't want to pick up my phone and know that resources have been cut and maybe there's a 5-minute delay on when that police officer arrives because there's less of them. This is a decision being made, say, in California, so I want to go and I want to get a gun to protect myself and my family, follow proper protocol, pass the checks. Do you support that?
Listen, We now live in a different America with people being able to now carry concealed weapons. California has not analyzed what our laws are with respect to that.
No, but I'm asking you. I'm asking you if you
what
support
I support is if someone under the law needs to defend themselves, then they can defend themselves. And what I would say to you, just to finish up on that, is we have tested this program. Our residents have wanted foot patrols in our residential streets, and we are giving them 30 boots on the ground, and we're doing it in a pragmatic way, which brings public safety, but also slowly phases out, literally, actually, the total of 1 deputy in 90 days. That is something that will give more public safety to people, and we're going to monitor the program and see what happens in 9 months.
Those people better be prepared, in my opinion, to do some combat. I mean, if you're telling me those people go and train to be, I mean, you're talking about boots on the ground. They better, I mean, are they kickboxing experts? Because people who intend to harm,
they're already
not
on
going
the
to talk
ground.
criminals.
They're already on the ground. They're already on the ground, so we know
That's what I'm
they've
saying,
done.
though. Look at the crime.
Yeah, they're already
on the
all over the city in the commercial areas, which actually have a higher amount of crime than everywhere else. So they've already been tested, and they've been successful.
I've actually said this is Vincent Oshana here. I actually witnessed this firsthand. I was working, doing stand up, auditioning, doing all my stuff, working security in North Hollywood on Magnolia and Lancashire, which is all little restaurants and little diners, and it's popping coffee shops and all that stuff. And there was always, I want to say 3 or 4, because I was working security, the safety ambassadors that you were speaking of, that they wear the yellow shirts and no gun, and they patrol. I personally didn't see any less crime. I mean, the fighting and everything was still happening. The only thing that they were responding to from where I was at was the homeless situation. Like when homeless people were starting to, fight or argue, or, they were doing drugs, they were called. And there was instances where we needed the cops called. That's all that they were doing, was calling the cops for us, which we could have done ourselves. There was a guy that had a knife, and I was like, oh my God, the safety ambassador does not get involved. They just called 911, and I was like, I could have done exactly what you just did. So I'd be interested to see if the numbers do change, because at the end of the day, the cop was called, and if we're getting less cops and they're not getting motivated to come help, I don't see how that would help the crime rate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely curious.
We're in a partnership with the Sheriff's Department. Mm-hmm. We're not getting rid of them. We're actually also, by the way, looking at a feasibility study to create our own municipal police department too.
What is the motivation? If you don't mind me asking, what is the motivation to cut? You emphasized, it's only one officer. What is the motivation behind the cut overall? Why do you want to make that cut?
Sure, fiscal responsibility, because we had to pass a budget, and one sheriff's deputy equals 4.6 block by block ambassadors. So it is balancing a budget and reallocating the funding to another department that's an alternative. It is something new, and I understand the fear people have when people try new things. And this is a new alternative that is actually not new in our city. And by the way, regarding North Hollywood, I don't know about North Hollywood. We're City of West Hollywood, and our block by block program has worked.
Yeah, so, I agree with you on fiscal responsibility. You and I can agree on that point. I'm a fiscal responsibility girl. I'm somebody who you should line item budget, look at that budget, see what cut you can. But I'm just going to say to you that it's not realistic, in my opinion, if you're going to go for fiscal responsibility, the last area you should be looking at in a place that does have exponentially high crime is cutting the police force. It seems to me that there must be some political motivation involved here. There was political motivation involved in the defund the police movement at large. And I'm just going to put a warning out there that if you throw out, I don't care if it's a social worker, I don't care who it is, if they're unarmed and they're just going to seek to keep the peace, it's an admirable goal, it's an admirable gesture. But if they are faced with people who intend to do harm, who are armed, that's going to be a problem. And there are going to be families, moms, dads, that are going to take one look around at that, and they're going to say, I need to take this job onto myself if there's not going to be an active police officer to do what they can and should be doing in this space. So I would not be surprised if you see people going and registering for their gun licenses and seeing news stories like this in places like, WeHo or wherever it may be in New York City. I've seen it happen in New York City already. And you see, citizens feeling like they need to now do the job that police officers should be doing because they're concerned that a defund the police movement isn't prioritizing safety in the city. That's just my opinion.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.